Jupiter Broadcasting presents this show in mega stereo sound. This episode of the Linux Action Show brought to you in part by GoDaddy.com. Use the promo code Linux and save yourself some cash. And of course, from donations of people that are, it's like people get donated, you know? And it's free. It's free. It's tax exempt.
No, it's not.
No, when you donate people, it is. It's
donate people.
Right.
But
You can't, Chris, you can't put worth on person.
This week on the Linux Action Show, we review ArchBang. Is this hardcore Linux made easy or a simple distro you can skip? Tune in to find out. Plus, we find out which Nokia phone sells the best. Hint, it does not run Windows. And so much more. Oh, this week on the Linux Action Show. And welcome to the Linux Action Show, Season 20, Episode 5? Let's say 5. My name is Brian. That guy whose head is much smaller than mine today is Chris.
Hey there, Brian. Good to see you. The Zigbee.
Nice to see you too, little man.
People who are not watching the video version have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I'm remote today.
Yeah.
I've got the sick kid here, and I'm getting a little germy myself. So I was like, well, I can do it remote. Or I can bring this giant vial of nasty germs to Chris and get his whole family as sick as possible.
That is an important consideration because the kids get the parents sick. Like nobody braced me for how much that happened because I'm not a guy that got sick a lot, having a lot of clients, working around a lot of places. I kind of got used to being around people sick. You get kids, boom, everything they get, you get. People who are sick that get your kids sick, then your kids get you sick. It's horrible.
It's ridiculous. So my daughter's birthday's today, and we're having a birthday party this weekend. So I'm like, well, maybe she'll be over this cold by the weekend. But normally we'd have her be babysat today. We decided not to because what if there is a child there who also is sick? Then she'll have two sicknesses, which is more than one, and then who knows? All bets are off. So
double
sick.
Today. So the chat room's asking why we're doing it on Thursday. That's another oddity. We are doing the show on Thursday because, like you mentioned, we're having a birthday party. I'm going to be at a birthday party for your daughter on Sunday.
It's going to be rocking.
It's also the Super Bowl.
Now, everything's all thrown off. So everything's all kitty wonker. Now, some of you might know, I have a general morning routine. I get up on Sunday morning and I go get the greasiest fast food breakfast I can. This is something I do. I eat pretty healthy all week long, but then Sunday morning, right before the Linux Action Show, I load myself up on whatever biscuit, egg, sausagey, hash brownie combo I can get. Now, I didn't go out of the house today. So what am I going to do? Luckily, I went into my kitchen. I have Pop-Tarts. And boy, howdy, did that save the day.
I'm impressed. Those are frosting-free Pop-Tarts.
And then I got myself some Tang.
Nice,
so
dude.
I've got frosting-free Pop-Tarts right here and Tang. And I got to say, it's no substitute for 8 pounds of grease.
Right.
But it's doing the job pretty nicely.
Now what are you going to have get in your throat and make your throat close up during the show?
I don't know. Yeah. I'm a little worried. I'm thinking I might just be able to be loud and obnoxious the entire show today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
hey,
who knows?
Since you're a homebody today, I have got the perfect runs Linux for you this week. It's called the Digi, and it's made by a company called Zigbee, or it's based on a Zigbee platform, actually. Now, what it is, it's a smart home power gateway. Now, do you know what that means, B-Man?
I have no idea what a smart powered home gateway powered is.
Well, so Linux is already working on the future for you. I guess there's a consortium of smart power aware devices. They're going to be able to communicate with each other over, and I'm not kidding you, like a network they establish over your power line on their own. And these devices will be sort of self-metered, and they'll monitor how much power each other use, turn each other off when they don't need them. And this little device will be the controller for that, and of course, it runs Linux. Pretty cool.
I'm okay with that.
So, some people actually are pretty freaked out by the whole smart grid, smart power stuff, but at least it's Linux powered, so.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I have absolutely no opinion on any of the smart grid type stuff whatsoever.
And also, the chat room is letting us know that just as an update, we covered the awesome window manager last week. turns out that's the window manager the Kindle Fire uses. So there you go.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I completely forgot that during the show, but I'd read that beforehand. That's fantastic.
So we got a big show today. We're going to talk about ArchBang. We got tons of news to cover.
Tons of news.
We got more. We got so many app picks this week. It's ridiculous. Even though the Linux Action Show is a few days early this week for our recording, we still got a ton of stuff.
We have just enough app picks to kill a horse.
Whoa.
It's sad, but a horse somewhere in North America today may die from how many app picks we have.
Well, before we get to all of that, let's say good morning to the fine folks over at GoDaddy.com. And they've got a special deal. It is, after all, the Super Bowl, and Danica loves the show, and Brian loves Danica, right? Right? Are you guys out in the public about that yet? Or is that still...
Is that
I don't know.
I'm not sure if we've got a press release out about it.
I'm not sure
it's
if...
being drafted.
And
There's
her
a press
significant...
being drafted as I speak.
Okay, all right. Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, let me tell you a little bit about GoDaddy.com. This week, we're kicking off a new promotion that will last for the month of February, so jump on this one while you can. It's pretty awesome. It is, you can get, now you're ready, brace yourselves, deluxe hosting, the big boy package right there in the middle. You can get it for the cost of economy hosting. That's right. You can get the big boy hosting for the price of economy hosting only through the month of February if you use the code HostFeb7. That's one word, HostFeb7. And what you want to do is use HostFeb7 and then set up your site all about Danica and why she's so great and why she should come on the Linux Action Show. So what I would like you to do is make sure you put all of the keywords that you need in there to have Danica come on the Linux Action Show. Maybe we can start like some sort of grassroots SEO campaign.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And actually, last time they were running a deal like this is when I set up my Lunduke.com blog to be using the deluxe hosting.
Right.
It's mega cheap. The discounts are applied and are permanent.
Yeah.
So I'm paying like $5 a month for a huge amount of traffic that gets pushed through there. It's ridiculous how cheap that is.
You get unlimited bandwidth, which is really great.
It's awesome, and I tell you what, it has no problem handling little Reddit and Y Combinator hacker news surges of front page news items and whatnot. No problem.
That's what's great about it.
No problem.
Yeah, that's what's great about it. All right, B-Man. Now I've got a sort of non-traditional app pick this week for Android, but I had to go this route. It's kind of a historic release in a sense. The Humble Indie Bundle this week actually includes games for Android. So you get the desktop games for any platform, and you can also get the Android games that are the same games, only for Android. I mean, how great is that? You pay any price you want, and you get the games. I
gotta say though, I'm a little upset about it.
Oh yeah.
Where's the love for Windows Mobile? Is all I'm saying. The Humble Indie Bundle guys, they're touting their cross-platforminess, but I'm seeing no Windows Mobile love. It's disappointing.
For the iOS, no iOS support. You're okay.
Come on. I want those DRM free games for my iPad. Oh wait, that's not even possible.
Right. So I think the way I haven't bought this yet because I'm kind of poor, but I think I'm going to do it anyway. It's like you set the price you want, and then
you haven't bought it because you're poor. You can set the price you want.
I know, but I always feel like I should give more because I want to give more to the developers and the charities.
Well, dude, just set the big thing here is making sure that the average price paid per Linux user is pretty high. So just make sure it's like 1 penny higher than the average Linux. That way you at least don't hurt the Linux stats. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good point.
A couple of bucks.
Why don't we take a quick peek here and see what the Humble Indie Bundle is rocking at? Now, what's interesting too is I think they're just giving these away as APKs. So when you get these games, you get to download the game for your desktop and you get to download the APK for your Android device.
So
all right.
Cool.
Scrolling down here. Let's see here. Survey results are in so far. Now, I believe it still has like a day left to go, or maybe a few days left to go, actually. But Linux is currently rocking in at the average donation amount of $8.10, beating out Windows, which is at $5.45, and the Mac, which is at $6.84. Looks like there's been 97,000 purchases, a total of $586,000 so far.
Yeah. And once again, total income from the Linux side of things is roughly twice that as the Mac side of things, proving yet again,
like every time,
twice as profitable to make games for Linux as it is to make games for Macintosh.
Interesting.
Yet again, the proof for that.
I like.
Now that's pretty cool, and to be able to download those APKs individually, that's really cool. Wouldn't it be really cool if you could do like a custom ROM with all those APKs already in it? You know what I mean? And then you could just preload your phone, whatever tablet or phone device you got, and already have all those games that you got from the Humble Indie Bundle installed. Wouldn't that be cool, Chris?
It's like distros at that point, isn't it? It's you could have, because like last week we mentioned the Linux gaming distro, and then you could have gaming ROMs that you just download for any Android device and load on there, and here it's loaded.
Preload them.
Yeah. Kind of neat idea.
Pretty nice. It's just so hard to learn how to do that. Am I right?
Oh, but Brian, we have a bonus ROM pick this week, and it makes it crazy easy. Tell me about this one.
Pick. All right. A listener of the show and a user of my software, the Linux software creator, has used my tool to create something called the Easy Development Studio, which is all about making it easy to build custom Android ROMs. It is literally super easy, point and click, custom Android ROM creation. This was featured over on the XD Developers front page a couple of days back. I saw it and I'm like, dude, that's awesome. I got to tell people about that. Like an hour later, this guy emails me. He's like, yeah, this is mine. By the way, your show is great and I built this using your software. And so I looked behind me and there was a giant pile of bricks where before there was none.
Whoa.
And I was like, wow, that's darn exciting. So I'm like, I got to tell people about it now for sure.
Yeah.
So this is pretty cool. It's definitely an early beta, but it's already got a lot of really cool tools for it. So go ahead and check it out. It's all, open source and all that good stuff. It's called the Easy Development Studio. There's a link in the show notes or over on my blog.
Yeah, totally. In fact, Madja won't be able to put it in our link list because it's not an app that's in the Android app market. So you'll have to go to the show notes to get that.
An actual app. So you got to go to the show notes. Well, it's an app, but it's a desktop app that runs on Linux. So cool stuff.
Now we've got another this is our desktop app pick time. And I am so excited at the one you put in here because this is exactly the one I was hoping you'd feature. And of course, it's for the beer lovers out there. It's called Beersmith Home Brewing Software for Linux.
Yep, this is Beersmith too. Now, Beersmith's been out for a while for Windows. They recently ported it over to the Mac side of things, and just now they've got Beersmith 2 Beta for Linux.
That's awesome!
Now, Beersmith is a great application if you're looking at brewing your beer. I mean, it covers everything from recipes to calculations to temperature requirements to yeast levels to, everything.
Yeah.
Everything you could need to have a piece of software to help you brew beer for, Beersmith does. It's pretty fantastic. I don't actually drink beer anymore, but when I did, this would have excited the hell out of me.
And so homebrew is always the best. Homebrew, you cannot beat it. And this is, you can brew with confidence. So I want to see some people get out there and brew some beer.
Plus, this is just so nerdy. This is the nerdy way to deal with brewing beer.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. It's very cool. Now, this is a commercial piece of software. It's closed source, but it's not too expensive. I was checking the website. It's pretty inexpensive. I recommend it. It's pretty cool.
There's open source beer recipes online, so you could go get an open source beer recipe and use it in the app. So
there's actually GPL'd beer recipes.
Yeah, I know.
Which, now think about this for a second. That means that derived works also would have to be open source, which means, what do you derive after you drink beer?
I usually go pee.
Oh, well, that is now GPL'd. That means that it's getting mixed in with the water system. As it gets distilled down and cleaned up, it gets added to the water system, which means that your county water system is then GPL'd.
This is true. The viral nature of the GPL, Brian. It just can't be avoided.
Right. Right. Good stuff.
All right. So the GPL is taken over via the water system. Yeah. Because that works into everything. All right. Well, should we get on to our distro picks for this week?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, the first one up, which I just closed, is Bridge Linux. And this one was brought to our attention, and I thought it just fit in really well with the review we're doing this week of ArchBang, because it's kind of like along the same lines, right?
I think so.
Now,
it's kind of along the same lines. Bridge is basically Arch running XFC.
Yeah. And with all of hand-selected apps that, people are generally the people's favorites and things like that. It's a new release. It hasn't even made it to DistroWatch yet. And they're still it's really beginner days. It's
a pretty nice looking little distro. It's obviously just like a small little project, but it's kind of a cool looking one.
Yeah.
I don't know why this isn't on DistroWatch yet. The makers of it need to make sure that they work with DistroWatch to get that up there.
It's got, of course, it's got all the latest fresh changes here. It's got Scroll down here. It's got Pac-Man 4. It's got Kernel 3.2.2, Light DM for and it's got Network Manager, which is nice.
Well, here's the thing. Honestly, none of that even matters. I mean, it's Arch, which means you're going to have access to the bleeding edge of every single package on the planet.
I agree.
That's the cool thing about something like this. So Bridge Linux, you get the bleeding edge of everything. This is just kind of what it comes pre-set up as. So it gives you a pre-set up XFCE. I'm going to sneeze.
Oh, jeez. Oh, it's all right, B-Man.
That was not a comment on XFCE, by the way.
No,
XFCE does not make me sneeze, but that's pretty cool. I mean, it gives you a preset up XFCE environment, which, can be a little difficult to do if you're new to Arch. So this is pretty cool. The other random distro pick we did is TinyCore.
Yeah. Which
is, as it sounds, a ridiculously tiny Linux distribution. Super, super freaking tiny. I believe it's 64 megabits or less, they say. I thought it was quite a bit less than that last
you can
time.
You can actually run it with just 12 megabytes of disk space and like 8 megs of RAM if you don't want the GUI. If you want the GUI, you need 64 megs of RAM.
64 megs of RAM.
Yeah.
64 megs of RAM.
Talk about a great way to get
anyone to find a machine with only 64 megs of RAM in it.
Yeah, those machines probably don't even boot anymore. Well, I shouldn't say that because somebody will write in and say they do. But it does make the perfect distro to sort of breathe some life into an old computer. And because of my past school district life, I just always think of schools when I think of this. And especially with their budgets struggling during the recession, and they don't really have the money and the funds to buy a bunch of new computers. Yeah. And with more and more things going web-based, this is a great solution.
It's way, way cool. And, TinyCore is one of the cool ones. TinyCore kind of ranks up there in my book with things like Damn Small Linux and whatnot. Yep. Very cool. Very cool. Distros that I never run and have yet to have a reason to run, but love that they exist.
Chat room's given mention to Puppy, too. And
yeah, Puppy's cool.
Yeah, I also love the Puppy Linux. So there you have it. Well, B-Man, let's do the news.
What's new in the news this week?
Oh, all right, Brian. I'll tell you what's new on the news docket this week.
This is the understated news week, I've decided. So everything needs to be understated.
On a very special Linux Action Show, we cover the news and what's new in Linux on the news docket.
All right, what do we got?
All right, our first story is, well, if you can believe it, B-Man, Mandriva. We're not dead yet, just a flesh wound. So, unfortunately, the bid proposed by the external entity has been refused by the minority shareholders.
I'm going to eat a friggin' Pop-Tart when you talk about Mandriva. Because honestly, at this point, Mandriva's dead. Oh, we're not dead, but we're going to die in like a week. No, seriously, we're going to die in like a week. No, seriously, we're going to die in like a week. I don't care. I'm going to eat a Pop-Tart.
That's actually exactly what it is. You should eat that Pop-Tart because essentially it's more waiting until mid-February, until we have a final line on the whole Mandriva situation. So it turns out now that critical investor that pulled out, the fact that he pulled out is not so critical. They got a little more money that they can keep going for a little while longer. But really, like, what's the point? If nobody's gonna, as a commercial entity, as a commercial company that's selling a server product and a desktop product and support services, nobody is going to buy from you if they think you're going to shut down in a few weeks. You know what I mean? So at this point, you're not really gaining anything. And you're also just sort of losing all credibility if somehow you have some sort of golden parachute funding that comes in.
Can I say something?
Yeah, B-Man.
The unfrosted Pop-Tart I just ate a bite of is so much more interesting than Mandriva at this point. Seriously, I put this in the show notes because I think it's so ridiculous that there's even a news update from these guys about this.
It's
painful.
It's
not even a lot of information. If you go, seriously, guys, go check out the link in the show notes. Go to the blog.mandriva.com. Literally, the title of the blog post is "Not This Time," and by that they mean not this week. And there's no details. It's like 3 sentences and no other real information. So they're not giving enough information for their users or their investors, and they're not really accomplishing anything. So way to go, guys!
I completely agree. Nobody knows where to go from here. You know, it's hard on the community. It's hard on commercial users, and it's bad for business. And it's one of these things where they're just kind of turning themselves into a bit of a joke. And it's so sad because I know in our audience, and I know between you and I, there's a lot of long-term, past love for Mandrake and Mandriva. Nobody wants to see this happen, but it's just kind of become a train wreck.
Hell, a lot of us started on Mandriva, but come on. Anyway, let's move on to stuff that's actually happening and interesting.
Let's talk about own cloud. It's been a reoccurring topic here on the show, is sort of building your own cloud, getting away from closed source, privacy stealing commercial providers, and moving to something you build yourself. OwnCloud is an amazing tool to essentially replace a lot of functionality of things like Picasa and Dropbox and a lot of different online resources. OwnCloud 3 has just been released, just a day after my birthday, actually, and now includes major improvements to cloud text editing, which sounds like it could be a potential replacement for the Dropbox. Their App Store, which they've had before, has also gotten a big overhaul. Nice photo gallery and, also sync improvements. And they've also added some additional documentation to their wiki and community. I mean, OwnCloud is one of these things now that's kind of on my list of shame for not messing around with more.
OwnCloud is great. I mean, we played around with OwnCloud a little bit when the first version came out.
Yep.
But that's it. We didn't ever really touch OwnCloud 2. On a related note, have we really stressed everyone that Chris is 30 years old now? I mean, that really needs to be stressed here.
I don't know if it really needs to be
30
stressed.
30 years old.
Yeah.
30. He's 30 years old.
No big.
2 kids, a couple of mortgages, like 8,000 mortgages. His pieces are falling off. He's a little achy when he wakes up in the morning. It's pretty fantastic.
I don't think I could do the show anymore,
What all this means is, look at that hair. Look at that mop of hair he's got on his head.
Boom. Still there.
8 days, that stuff's going to be falling out.
It helps because it's plastic, though. So that's...
that does help.
So major props to OwnCloud. The reason I really want to give it a mention is because I want to kind of kick my own butt into gear to try it out, because I am a heavy user of Google and Gmail and Google Docs and online photo services.
Yeah.
And I know that's one area you've been really good at is you manage your own photo sharing and you have your own... What software is it you use again for your online galleries?
Gallery.
Yeah, just Gallery. That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's called Gallery 2.
Yeah.
The second one. But
yeah, which is just great. And so I'm putting this here to put myself on notice that it's time to look into OwnCloud and take some of this information back and own it myself. So maybe we'll see. Maybe
hey, the
I'll
more control we have over this information, the safer our information is.
Yeah, like the chat room's pointed out, is maybe this would be a good use for that Atom motherboard I have sitting around. It's a little OwnCloud server. That might be something, actually. I might look into that, because that could be
not a bad way to go.
Yeah, put a little Debian box on there, load up OwnCloud, get that run on the Atom, totally silent, low power. That'd be sweet.
That'd be pretty sweet.
All right. The next story on the news docket, I got to be honest, is one of those when I read this, my heart sank. It's bad news, folks. The Barnes & Noble antitrust suit against Microsoft has taken a step backwards. It's not looking good now. This is just the first initial finding by the judge, but and again, this isn't complete, this isn't final, but it's not good. The documentation dismissing antitrust complaints is under seal. However, it is titled Initial Determination Granting Microsoft Motion for Summary Determination of Respondents. What people are reading that into is that the judge on the Microsoft anti-patent suit that Barnes & Noble has filed against them, his initial findings are that the case, that Barnes & Noble doesn't have a case, because Barnes & Noble is trying to prove that Microsoft is abusing their position of power through their patents to force them to basically make Barnes & Noble take steps that are so anti-competitive for them that they essentially don't make a profit selling their devices. And we covered some of the actual patents that Microsoft is being sued over from Barnes & Noble, and they're things like ability to load images in the background in your web browser. And I mean, they're very super fundamental, like web type stuff that would apply to any operating system on the planet. I mean, it's like icons arranged in a grid kind of stuff. Swipe to unlock kind of level type things. And when we read that list on the Linux Action Show, it was so painfully obvious that this is Microsoft just using these really loose-fitting things to beat Barnes & Noble over, and not just with one device, but they want all future devices, and they want enough money out of Barnes & Noble that Barnes & Noble would actually potentially lose money when they sell a Nook. So Barnes & Noble took the only route possible, is instead of paying these Android licensing fees like every single other device manufacturer has done. In fact, I read a stat this week that 70% of Android device makers now pay licensing fees to Microsoft for every device sold, and that Microsoft makes more money off of Android licensing than they do off of Windows Phone sales.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And so
There's
now
a lot more Android phones out there.
Yeah, but now that we're getting this Barnes & Noble was like literally our only hope. I mean, who else was going and taking Microsoft to the fight like this? Microsoft, of course, released their statement saying, Microsoft welcomes the ITC's decision. Today's action by the ITC makes it clear that Barnes & Noble's patent misuse defense was meritless. We remain as open as ever as extending the license to Barnes & Noble and invite them to join the many other major device manufacturers in paying for Microsoft-deployed intellectual property that they use in their devices.
So Microsoft is going to welcome the possibility of making more money.
Yeah. Strangely
they're
enough.
welcoming that. That's interesting. Yeah. Sometimes I even welcome that. It's welcomed. It's welcomable. The interesting thing about all of that is not what's actually happening, because honestly, it's part of a doomsday prediction that we could all make, and it sucks, and it makes me unhappy. The really interesting part about all that is how people manage to get all that information from the quote that you read from the judge. Could you read part of that quote again real quick?
Yeah, sure. And it's it's pretty I don't know, generic, you might say. But the quote is actually, it's not even from the judge so much as from the title of the documentation filed by the judge.
Right.
Initial determination granting Microsoft's motion for summary determination of respondents' first affirmative defense of patent misuse.
Yeah. Does that mean anything to you? Like, honestly, to me, that just sounds like Vogon poetry. Like, I'm not getting that at all.
No, there, of course, I forget Elon or whatever his name is, the anti-Android guy who's always posting the patent lawsuits with Google, claims that the case is dead. The only merit that I think really gives that this is a really bad sign is that Microsoft's walking around like cock of the walk now and strutting and saying, yeah, look what we did. And that to me is a bad sign. That's
not a good sign.
Also,
you never want to see that.
Also, it seems like in the last few years, the U.S. has made a turn to such pro-capitalism that the bigger company with the deeper pockets is just almost always now by default winning. And this is just another case of that. And also, the history with now patent lawsuits and judges making uninformed decisions. Like, a judge probably doesn't have the technical expertise to know that the technological patents that Microsoft have filed are so fundamentally basic and generic. And remember, we're talking like 5 or 6 things here that Microsoft is claiming ownership over, and they would apply to any device on the market and any distribution, any desktop. And Microsoft is just selectively choosing to enforce them. And to me, that's the biggest sign of anti-competitive behavior, is when you selectively target and just cherry pick things, you know?
Now, what makes me really sad, though, is Microsoft isn't the only company doing this. Microsoft's doing it, Apple's doing it, HTC's doing it, Google's doing it. Companies we hate are doing it, and companies we love are doing it. And when the companies we love do it, a lot of times we go, hoorah, because in a way, they're kind of sticking it back to the companies we hate for doing it in the first place. But really, it's just a lot of the companies doing all the same thing over and over again, suing each other in court over patents relating to sticking a battery in a phone, or you can touch a screen, and things like that. It's ridiculous that all these companies are doing it. I hate it, and it's very difficult for me to support any of them for doing it. Like, I love it when HTC and Google go back after Apple. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because it's like, yeah, stick it back to Apple for filing all those senseless patent lawsuits against Samsung and everyone else. But really, they're using the same kinds of patents that Apple was using in the first place.
And they're doing the same big patent buy-ups and things like that to amass a war chest. Now, do you think with Google bringing on Motorola Mobility that maybe they'll go once again, step up to challenge Microsoft here? It could be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now,
Google's not backing down.
The Barnes & Noble case isn't over yet. Actually, the actual trial starts on Monday. What do they call it here? The ITC trial will start on Monday, February 6th. So this is just the initial document. There could be another round of fights in here. They could open up that document once it goes public and find out that he's just throwing a couple of things out or something. I mean, who really knows? So I don't want to freak out yet, but with the early cheerleading Microsoft doing,
I kind of want to freak out.
Yeah.
I kind of want to freak out already. Why don't you stay calm about it? I'm going to freak out about it.
Okay.
And then that way we've got our bases covered, no matter what.
Good thinking, dude. I like the way you think.
Hey, can we move on to the next story? Because it makes fun of Windows Phone, and I really like that.
Yeah, that does make you feel better.
It makes me feel a lot better.
No accident this was put next story in the news docket, B-Man. Nokia blames salesman for poor Windows Phone sales. Now, this is one of these. This is one of these where the /dot summary actually sums it up pretty much better than
all of it.
Yeah, it really is. Here, I'll just read it.
Read it. This is good stuff.
Stephen Elop of Nokia has placed some of the blame for struggling Windows Phone sales on the mobile phone shops themselves. for not pushing it properly. Because he claims that like they're getting commissions on Android devices and things like that. He says they're not giving the exact details of the phone sales numbers, so people have kind of had to cook up some different ones. But if you go down in the article here, the best available numbers seem to be the maximum Lumia sales from an ex-Nokia executive. And he also has had he's had a good track record of predicting some Nokia do's and don'ts. The Lumia sold 600,000 phones in 2011. And that includes the phones that were sold to ship in inventory. So either on store shelves or in Nokia's warehouse. 600,000 phones for 2011.
Okay.
Android sells 500,000 phones in a month.
Yeah, in a month.
So, and I think Apple just sold like 18 trillion phones for their last quarter and made $18 trillion a second or something like that. It was pretty interesting numbers. So 600,000 is a dramatic failure when you stack it up next to those other two competing platforms.
I mean, it's a lot of phones to be sure, but it's definitely it's a distant third. Hell, it's a distant fifth place behind a lot of other smartphone manufacturers.
They go on to say, though, B-Man, the Nokia N9 has been available in all markets. Remember, they didn't, except for the U.S., in all markets outside the U.S., basically.
Yeah.
Sold almost 5 million units. Or it could have sold, they projected 5 million units had it been available in the U.S., which would have put Nokia into profitability. The N9 at this point is selling better than the Windows-based Nokia phones. The N9, the one where they're just going to do one version of and put MeeGo on there and then call it good, is selling better than the Windows phones.
Weird. That's so weird.
Do you just want to shake your head and just... The title in the Linux Action Show subreddit was, "See Nokia, told you so."
Yep. Well, remember, only a couple of weeks ago, we had our predictions episode. Nokia will be dropping Windows Phone by the end of the year. I am absolutely certain of it.
Well, and
there's no way they can keep this up. They're a huge company, and they need their phones to sell well. This is not going to work for them.
I think people are being a little, what's it called when you get kind of distracted by what everybody's covering and not really thinking about the whole picture? I'm drawing a blank on the phrase, but...
Drunk.
People are getting a little tech news drunk with this and kind of looking at the drama of it. The reality is, I don't believe there's a GSM network in operation that doesn't use a ton of patented Nokia technology just for the towers to operate.
That's true.
And Nokia itself has established itself in this industry for such a long time that even if they have to reduce and reduce and reduce, they're not going away. And
no, they're not going away.
Could it not? And Nokia has sort of jumped around before between platforms. Could it not be that Nokia is just riding this horse for as long as they can to sort of save the ship? They're going to twist Microsoft's arm to improve some of their infrastructure. Like I heard that they're twisting Microsoft to get Qt running on Windows Mobile. That could be huge, right? And then when all of this sort of just fizzles out because nobody wants a Windows-based device. They're not sexy, and once they realize that, they might just have themselves all of the key pieces they need to put together a great independent platform. And they'll just be like, "See ya, Microsoft. Thanks for the ride."
But they already had a great independent platform. They've had several great independent platforms.
But they weren't in that OS mode. You know, they weren't bleeding, or they were starting to bleed, but they weren't. When they made that deal with Microsoft, they weren't on the bottom. You know, they weren't just. Now they're going to hit rock bottom is what I'm saying, and sort of reevaluate where they're at and realize why they need to be an independent shop. Yeah, right there.
Right here.
That's the great device.
Fancy, powerful, awesome. And this was just one device.
Is that the N810 there? Or is that
That's my N900. N810's over there.
Yeah.
But the N900, years ago now, still awesome. Still my go-to powerful device. Looks great. Works great. Fancy as all get out. Honestly, more modern than almost all the various phones you can get out there. And it's a modern phone. It may be lacking a little bit on processor speed nowadays, but it's plenty good. And the OS on it's powerful. They had it. In fact, they still have it. They just choose not to use it. They have several advanced, good-looking, sexy-looking operating systems that still look better than iOS 5, that honestly look a little bit better than Ice Cream Sandwich from Google. These are good-looking systems. These are powerful systems with a mega crap ton of available software. I mean, they literally can roll out and say, you know what, your app markets are great, but we have about 600,000 free open source applications that are pretty pimping and every emulator on the market, and they all run great.
Well, so I've come to a conclusion.
But they choose not to.
here's what I think makes it, despite its lack of processor power and GPU or whatever, as devices mature, the one thing that still makes the N900 and the N810 a more powerful device is you could install a software development package on there and actually develop software for the device on the device.
It's a full Debian-based distribution on your device. And
All
it's
of
just like
these other-
Migo. It's a full RPM Red Hat-based distribution right on your device.
All of these other devices come with platforms where you require a PC to develop for it, and then you load the application onto it, making it more of an appliance or of a toy. Whereas that device could actually one day replace a computer because it can develop software for itself.
It is a computer in your pocket. It's got Bluetooth, USB port. I mean, well, it's not a USB, but you can use a little dongle to make it into a USB. And so you can use a keyboard, mouse, everything.
Heck yeah.
It's awesome.
So,
and they could do that. It's just Nokia doesn't know. They don't know their ass from their elbow. And they haven't for years now. So I tell you, by the end of the year, they will ditch Windows Phone. They will go onto some brand new OS that will be a brand new strategy, despite the fact that they've already spent $1 bajillion developing great systems, and they'll come up with something new and that'll fail too. They'll just keep doing it over and over and over again.
Gushy Marty, or I don't know how you say his name, is saying who would want to compile software on their phone? And I realize that's sort of a strange argument to make, but if you think about it it to me is a very easy delineator between powerful device, non-powerful. Toy, serious device. Is it can it make software for itself?
And to be quite honest, let's say you're a Python developer. Let's say you like Python and you like GTK. Developing software on the N900 or the N810 is an absolute dream because you don't have to compile it, you don't have to build it. It just runs right out of the gate. It's actually pretty fantastic. If you've got a nice keyboard, like a nice Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, there's very little difference between developing it on the device and on your desktop. You really don't get any benefit from being on the desktop. It's quite exciting. Unfortunately, they've stopped producing those devices and they've stopped supporting those operating systems, and they're doing everything they can to kill off innovation, even though it hurts their bottom line, which confuses the hell out of me. I get why Microsoft doesn't want us to have a phone like this. It's not locked down. I get why Apple doesn't want you to be able to build apps on your iPhone. It's not locked down enough. It gives you a little too much power. It takes away their control of the ecosystem. I don't get why Nokia doesn't like that, because Nokia only stands to gain from winning over everyone's hearts by providing us with this sort of power.
They're hardware sales. They sell hardware.
They sell hardware.
They don't care.
They don't care if I buy an upgrade for their OS or something along those lines. Sure, they may want to make their new OV store and make us get all excited about that, but really, they're a hardware manufacturer. What do they care? They're being retarded. I'll tell you what, Nokia board of directors, when you get a little tired of Mr. Elop, go ahead and give Brian a call. Me and Chris will come in. We'll co-CEO it for 6
the Linux
months.
Action Show consulting firm. I like it, dude.
Here's the thing. I will be your CEO for $1 for 6 months. And I guarantee you, at the end of that 6 months, we will be selling a hell of a lot more of phones kind of like this than you're currently selling of Windows phones.
That's true.
And I won't be doing anything all that smart because I don't know how to be a decent CEO of a gigantic mega phone company.
No, it's just that easy.
It's just that easy, guys.
Of course, they could just watch this episode and get the blueprint and then not really need us. So,
all right?
Yeah.
Done.
Although they're obviously not watching, or else they wouldn't be screwing up so bad already, B-Man.
Bunch of gooftards.
I want to talk about OpenSUSE's dream, Brian, because, Brian, OpenSUSE has a dream.
They do.
And that is for a beautiful desktop. They're actually, and I put this in the news docket because I know people in our audience are going to love this story. OpenSUSE artwork team is making a call out for people to send in screenshots of their setup because they want to get inspired on how people configure their desktops. Doesn't matter if it's KDE or GNOME or one of the others. The team just wants to understand the way people tweak their desktop environments to meet their needs. And of course, okay, so everybody loves sending in screenshots of their cool Linux desktops.
Of course.
And I got a little gratuitous screenshot porn that I'll roll through here while we talk about this.
Good man.
OpenSUSE 12.2. Are you getting excited?
For 12.2?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really am.
Why would you be?
Well, because I've been trying a lot of distros lately. And, so sometimes
it gets a little old after a while sometimes.
It does. Yeah. But I don't know. It's like every release of OpenSUSE is getting better and better and more on the mark.
Yeah.
Not that they were ever off the mark, but as some of the other distros are sort of straying from the mark, it is just great to see them just nailing it. So if you want to send in your screenshot, show them how you tweaked out your desktop. I'll include links in the show notes like we always do. I'd like to see somebody needs to send in a screenshot with a little Linux Action Show video playing in their screen, right?
And they made a really big point. They don't really care what desktop environment or window manager you're using. They really just want to know anything. If you're using X monad with a bunch of crazy scripts all tweaked out to make it just so, they want to know about that too. They just kind of want to know how you customize your desktop. How do you do it? How do you make it great?
Right. Right.
And that's awesome.
Now,
and you kind of nailed that. I just want to reiterate that OpenSUSE is being great right now because they're not going all nutty. All they're doing is saying, you know what? Every release, let's make it better than the last release.
Right.
Same basic idea, just better than before.
Right.
That's so great. I like that. I mean, how ridiculously simple is that? They're not going, you know what? Let's take a crazy idea and let's replace every menu. Or the menu system with something brand new. They're not doing anything like that. And, not to say Canonical's wrong for taking big risks. I love the big risks. But it's nice to see a reliable distribution out there that sits around between 10 and 12% market share of the Linux world always for like the last decade, do a really great job of just making a better and better system all the time.
Well, it's a great way for them to get that market share percentage up is by delivering stuff that the people want. So
totally.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this Linux kernel chief because it's an interesting story. People don't always think about the fact a lot of these distros house a lot of really important developers for Linux. And one of them was a kernel chief here, and he was working at the OpenSUSE, or actually probably
at Novell.
At Novell, yeah. And his name is Greg Coran Hartman. You think I got that right? Cora Hartman?
Close enough. He'll know who you're talking about.
He's labeled as the maintainer of the Linux stable branch. And I thought this was kind of an interesting transition because he's moving on to the Linux Foundation. And he's just saying, while there were no direct conflicts between working on the Linux team and SUSE, he wants to move to a more vendor-neutral environment like the Linux Foundation, which he says allows him to spend a larger amount of time interacting with other companies and vendors, as well as helping out Linux in environments that were not necessarily the focus of his previous employer.
It makes total sense.
And he's a local Seattle resident, so he ought to drive up here and join us in studio and talk about what he does at the foundation.
Absolutely. I think that's mega cool. I like Nokia and everything, but it makes total sense to have this guy over at the Linux Foundation. It's kind of like, you remember when Linus Torvalds was working for the chip manufacturer that made the
SIA, was it SIA? Or was it no, it was
trans something or
yes, right, started with a T.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Where you know what? He had other things to do, stuff was pulling him away from work on the kernel and whatnot. It really just made sense. Transmeta. Thanks,
Transmeta, yep.
It really made sense to get him over into the Linux Foundation where he could focus on working on Linux and the Linux kernel. And it makes sense for this guy too. I like to see that. I think he'll be able to do much better work there.
Agreed. He says he's also focusing on helping companies and individuals become part of the kernel development team, and because these are high priorities, and also improvements to the kernel's internal API to make it easier for people to write stuff to, which is a great idea.
That's very cool.
And he also wants to help others get sort of understand what's involved in getting started on working on Linux. He also had a hand on helping Microsoft get their code for Hyper-V into the Linux kernel. He was, I guess, a big part of that. So there you go. All right, B-Man. A mention for a little gaming release for the fans out there. The Battle of Westnoth 1.10 has been released. Features new campaigns and, of course, overall UI improvements, stuff like that.
I love Westnoth.
Really, I don't have a ton to say here other than, go play, people. Open source games on Linux are awesome, and there's a new version comes out. This is one of those top-down games where it's, sort of, I don't know.
Turn-based fantasy strategy, role-playing-ish.
Yeah. That's a lot of things.
It's a lot like the Heroes of Might and Magic series.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's a good reference. Okay. So, of course, it's also got 4 new multiplayer maps, which is awesome. Gosh, man, next time we do a gaming episode, maybe
plays really well on the Nokia N900 and N810s that they killed off on those operating systems that are just no good, and they should go with Windows phones.
But you're not bitter at all. Not bitter. Not bitter.
God damn it.
But they've got improved multiplayer support. So I'm thinking when we do a Linux gaming edition of the Linux Action Show, we should play this with some peeps on the live stream.
Oh, we totally should.
Right?
It's a great game.
Yeah. So check that out. There's also a PPA if you're an Ubuntu user for basically every release for the last 5 of them or something like that. And there you have it. Looks really great. I'm often impressed by the breadth of open source games we have available to us now.
Dude, for sure.
Now, Brian, story that's just late breaking right before we recorded the show completely changes the game. I know, extremely important to you. Game changer. Biggest game changer ever. Firefox 10.0 has been released. Why?
Good.
Why did you put this in the news docket?
Because it's 10.0, dude. It's a big, gigantic, round number.
Yeah, but they fart through releases like I do after a bowl of chili, man. It's nothing. It's just they go through releases faster than I've ever seen. I'm just saying the numbers are starting to lose.
10.0. I figure with Firefox, you make a big deal about it at 10.0, and then you make another big deal at it when they hit like version 20
or 13 or something like that. Yeah,
pretty much because of that. I am never going to speak the word Firefox again until they hit version 20.
They got the top feature that I think you'll like quite a bit. The forward button is now hidden until you navigate back. Because
who cares? Who cares?
Why are people hiding buttons and menus all the time? Why are we doing this?
Why? Seriously. I've got an idea. Why don't they make it so we can't find the scroll bar too? I mean, like, who cares? All right, move on.
All right. The last story is...
it's 10.0, dude.
I know. Okay.
Big round number.
And it is... We shouldn't give Firefox too hard of a time, because I happen to know that Firefox is one of those important stepping stones. You load up Firefox on a Windows user's desktop. You load up LibreOffice. You get them used to those kinds of things. When they move over to Linux, it's that much easier for them after they've been using that stuff. And, you can never discount Firefox for that. I am a Chrome user these days. I go back to actually about every release. I try out Firefox again.
Yeah, I use Epiphany and Chromium. Those tend to be my two. And Midori. Sometimes use Midori. I don't think I've loaded up Firefox for much of anything other than to download other stuff. Maybe
Chromium is generally my go-to just because it's in almost every repo now. It's always up to date.
Dude, Epiphany. That's the way to go. Anyway, continue on.
Little bear for me, B-Man. All right, so the last story on the news docket is just one of those.
It is a little bear.
It's going to make you smile. The graphics have been benchmarked in the Raspberry Pi. Of course, everybody remembers that's a little $25 or $35 Linux board, which is awesome. The graphics have been benchmarked, and they outperform the iPhone 4's S GPU. Yeah. It actually got a better and people have been pretty impressed by the iPhone 4S's GPU. Some have even equated it to about the quality level of an Xbox original +1 level, but they're saying the Pi for $25 is going to use the Broadcom BCM2835 chipset, which is designed to handle intensive multimedia tasks. Also, the founder of the Raspberry Pi worked specifically, he claims, with Broadcom to make sure that this thing is heavily optimized. It's outperforming the Tegra 2, and they showed it off at the Scale 10X conference, and they did the benchmarks there in public, and people were impressed.
That's so fantastic. Oh man, I'm so bummed out that I can only order one of these at the initial launch.
I know.
Because they're limiting how many people can get at first. Luckily, I'm sure manufacturing is going to ramp up and I can get a few more. But I am excited to build random cases and basically just build devices out of this. What I want to do, take like an old Game Boy, gut it, stick a Raspberry Pi in there, turn that, put a nice new LCD screen in it.
That's so cool.
Brand new emulator rig. Maybe put a little HDMI out because it's got the HDMI. Boom. Plug it into your TV. Oh man, there's just so many things you can do with the device that size, that power usage, that small, that performance. I mean, it's got everything on it you need, but a little bit of like storage, and that's about it. It's just,
I'd love.
Oh my god,
I'd love to see if I could. I'd love to see if I could use these in the studio somehow because they're quiet. They're low power. All those things work. Really lend themselves very well. If nothing else, we've seen this video of it running as an Xbox Media Center, and we know that it has hardware H.264 decoding even at 1080p.
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, you gotta figure you're gonna see some little smaller than the popcorn hour, even multimedia devices now, because you can.
Yeah, they're gonna be popping out of nowhere. It's just fantastic.
And who doesn't love a little bit of Raspberry Pi? Anyway,
seriously,
it's got a great
everyone
name.
Loves Raspberry Pi.
I know.
Now, honestly, I'm more of a BlackBerry guy myself.
Yeah,
but I will eat Raspberry Pi.
Yeah,
if it's $25 and has nice 1080p decoding that's that fast and is faster than an iPhone 4S.
I agree.
I will do that.
I agree. All right, B-Man. Well, that's all the news for this week.
Sometime back, we did a review of Arch Linux. How long ago was this? Probably about a year ago.
It was a little over a year, I think, yeah.
A little over a year ago. And we basically resolved that it's a great release. I mean, a great distro. Arch is a lot of fun. It's a rolling release, so they never really have any specific release. It's not like they come out with Arch 12.2 in the summer of 2010 or whatever.
Right.
So it's very difficult to review a distribution like that. It's kind of like reviewing Linux from scratch. You can't really review that because it's just Linux and it just is whatever it is at that moment. Luckily, there are some Arch-based distributions out there that are very, very cool. Now, Arch, as you may remember, is very much nothing by default. It is a collection of knowledge and repositories and AURs that allow you to easily install the latest and greatest packages of any project that's out there, which makes it very easy to set up an Arch system that's running the latest GNOME 3, the latest KDE, and get much more bleeding edge than just about any distro on the planet. But again, out of the box, though, you don't even have a GUI. You got nothing.
It's a pretty big barrier to entry for people that want to check it out, because Arch is perfect for folks who want to stay on top of new releases of open source desktop software and want to tinker a little more with their system. It's also a great playground to learn a ton about Linux, but
it really is.
But not having a full-on install is difficult. And it's a problem we set out a while ago to try to fix with some other distributions we've looked at here on the show, but the problem was they weren't mainline Arch. You know, they were kind of like offshoots of Arch a little bit.
Totally. Now, luckily, there is a project that has basically taken Arch and pre-set up a great set of live CDs that allows you to have a working but fairly small footprint installation of Arch with a nice GUI, a nice open box based GUI out of the gate, and that is ArchBang. And it is kind of loosely based on the popularity of CrunchBang, which is a kind of Debian Ubuntu based distribution that's very small and lightweight and uses open box window manager as well. And ArchBang use the same kind of basic look and feel and ideas, but entirely based on Arch. That is kind of the idea in a nutshell.
Right. And the fact that it comes, I think one of the huge advantages that ArchBang provides over mainline Arch is the live CD environment, because you can get up with a full graphical open box GUI, really check it out, you know, and get an idea if Arch works on your system or how Arch is laid out and what some of its tools are without ever even formatting your drive, which is kind of a funny thing to say because otherwise Arch doesn't really provide that, not directly.
No.
So that's a huge leg up you get just with ArchBang, just to try out Arch, even if you don't want to install it.
It does make it a hell of a lot easier to try out Arch. Now, it is a little different, though. I mean, for most people, they're not going to be coming from an open box environment. They're going to be coming from a GNOME or a KDE style environment, or maybe an XFCE or something. Right. They're not really going to be coming from open box. Open box is a very cool window manager. So I thought as we review ArchBang, we probably also should talk a little bit about the default look and feel of what ArchBang is providing with OpenBox here. Because we talked a little bit about the awesome window manager last week, I feel like it would be a disservice to the OpenBox world if we didn't at least touch a little bit on the usability of the default ArchBang installation.
I'll tell you what I like the most about OpenBox and a lot of the awesome and XNomad and all that stuff is especially with a distro like Arch, where you can really replace a lot of the plumbing on a frequent basis, you know.
Frequent, like as in every couple of minutes.
You could, if you wanted to go crazy. I mean, Arch has testing and Arch has stable. And the stable isn't so bad, but it's still, anytime you update a major component of your desktop, you always run the risk of breaking something that breaks GNOME or something like that.
Yeah.
And with things like OpenBox and Fluxbox, they have such a minimum line of requirements and dependencies compared to those other desktops. You can really go to town on the distro plumbing, and it doesn't affect OpenBox at all. You don't have to worry about these major updates all of a sudden leaving you stranded and not having a functional GUI desktop anymore. OpenBox pretty much is bulletproof. And I like that.
It kind of is. I mean, it's as far of a it's as close to a bulletproof window manager and desktop environment as you're going to get. I mean, it really is pretty rock solid. And you know, you kind of mentioned touch on a little bit here. It's really easy to hork up your system running Arch or ArchBang. There are so many packages and you can update them almost constantly, and who knows what you're getting. So one of the general rules of thumb in Arch or ArchBang is don't update willy-nilly. Don't just assume because updates are available, you should click that button and let those updates roll on in, because a lot of the time you're going to hork things up because they are bleeding edge.
Right.
So while we oftentimes have made tons of fun of, let's say, Ubuntu lets a package come out that screws up your X11. This has happened actually a couple of times. And the whole internet explodes with rage.
Yeah.
Whereas on Arch, this probably happens every third Thursday. I mean, this happens a lot.
But it's not as bad in Arch because there's a community, a forum community that's sort of been built up around this culture of frequent updates. It sort of helps alleviate some of that issue.
Well, that's it. And it's a different mindset. You go into Arch knowing that if you just update willy-nilly and you never even bother to check what you're updating, you're going to break your system. You want to have control over your system. You want to take responsibility for your system, so you run Arch. And if you ever do get into trouble, the amazing Arch community is amazing. The amazing Arch community is amazing. They have great documentation. They have great forums. The people are incredibly helpful. And because ArchBang is based on Arch, you get all that for free. I mean, basically think of ArchBang as just pre-set up for you Arch. And it's wonderful to base it off of that because you get full control. So I really was enjoying running ArchBang. It's faster than all get out. Yeah. If you're used to, say, running the current Ubuntu with Unity or the current, say, Fedora with GNOME Shell.
Well, and I'm an OpenSUSE lover, but OpenSUSE isn't known for its raw performance. And when you combine a lean system with a lean desktop manager like OpenBox,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It is absolutely stellar how fast it feels.
I think taking your speed point is also a good point to mention where I think, for me, ArchBang is going to fit in, and that is in speeding up my deployment of a traditional Arch system, because ArchBang includes a ncurses-based installer that walks you through each individual installation step of Arch, making the Arch installation for me take like 5 minutes to get Arch up and running. And then after that, I've got Pac-Man. I can do all my regular updates and all that kind of stuff. So I might continue using ArchBang just to get myself going on vanilla Arch a little faster. And
it's a Kickstarter.
Yeah, exactly. So I like it. I like it a lot from that. I found the install. Once you get up and going off of the graphical live CD, it's just a simple right click in the OpenBox menu, choose install, and it just launches a terminal with the ncurses installer. You can also use this installer from the command line. So if you want to skip loading up the entire X11 and OpenBox environment from like a CD, which can take a little while, you can go right. There's an option in the bootloader to go right to command line and just start this ncurses installer right from Go. It's even faster. So.
It's great. It's really, really great. I mean, I run a really customized Arch setup over here to run my BBS. And it runs on a little Asus EE 700 netbook. Very little RAM, 4 gigs of hard drive storage. 4. You can count them on not an entire hand worth of fingers. I mean, it's just not a lot of space. It's not a lot of RAM. It's very little processor speed. I think it's, what is it, those things, I think it's a Celeron 600 is in there. It's something just ridiculously slow.
It's an underclock Celeron or something.
It's an underclock Celeron. I mean, it's just slower than molasses. But honestly, Arch screams on that thing. I'm able to run like a nice little 20-node BBS server on there with no noticeable slowdown and a hell of a lot of overhead to spare. So I can hop on there and do a little graphics editing on top of it. And because the system is all based on Arch, I have it streamlined to where I have just the packages I want installed. I know what's on there because I built it up. Now, ArchBang kind of covers up some of that because it already pre-installs a lot for you. But luckily, with Pac-Man and everything else, it's really easy to trim it right back down to get rid of some of the fluff that you may not want. And luckily, with ArchBang, almost said CrunchBang, there's so little fluff that only takes about 2 to 3 minutes to actually remove the stuff you don't want. In fact, one of the first things I did was immediately start installing a bunch of other window managers just because, I've never really been an OpenBox guy.
Right.
But then I decided I'm going to come back to OpenBox because this is what ArchBang ships with. I'm going to give it some love. And one thing that I've got to say, it's fast, it's lean, it's highly configurable, and I don't like it at all. I went to openbox.org. And I started looking around. I'm like, I want to get to boxlook.org. I think is one of the big theming sites. Started applying all sorts of themes, putting together lots of customizations. Looked through openbox.org for examples of how I could make an OpenBox environment look, and immediately stumbled across a picture of a man having sex with a scorpion.
Right.
And I kind of decided at that point, as that's one of the official screenshots of the OpenBox community, that maybe OpenBox isn't for me. Maybe it's for a different target demo. The man having sex with Scorpion demo, and I just kind of decided to kind of go with it.
I don't have that picture, but I did see it.
If you go to openbox.org, click on the screenshots and scroll down just barely. There's a man having sex with a scorpion. I am not joking. It's in a, like, someone's got a little
Where's the
GIMP window
screenshot
up.
section? That's what I don't see. I don't see the screenshots, but oh, there it is. Yep, right there on the side. Oh boy.
Yep.
The chat room was also asking if the ArchBang installer is different than the Arch installer. Now, I've been led to believe that it is a modified version of the Arch installer, so it's a little
bit simpler. Basically, I think it's basically the Arch installer made a little simpler.
Yeah,
it's a little simpler, a little
some
quicker.
menu options are taken out. It's a little quicker. Yeah, it's one of those. It's funny. Everybody in the chat room is going to look at the screenshots right now, so it's not loading.
okay, guys. Okay.
Oh, there it is. I found it. It just popped up. It just popped up.
You can go look at the man having sex with the scorpion on the OpenBox website later. But I guess what I eventually came to was OpenBox is a really
there it is. I found it. Yeah, and it's an AIDS ad or something like that. But
oh dear, yeah. I'm glad you put that up so we can see it again. That's fantastic.
I used the super zoom feature too, Brian.
Did you really?
Zoom and enhance.
Oh, you're that person. So OpenBox was not necessarily for me, but it actually ended up being a really good choice, I thought, for ArchBang, because it is so small, it is so lightweight, and it's not quite as radical as something like Awesome or Xmonad and
or Sharaka. I was gonna. It's also not as radical as Sharaka Raka Ra or whatever that distro was, Shikaka. Which is also Arch based, but going off in its own direction. Yeah,
I think it's Chakra. Yeah.
So
it's interesting there.
I'm an OpenBox guy, but only for the servers. And really now at this point, I'd probably use Awesome over OpenBox. You know what I'm saying? For me, XFCE seems like sort of the sweet spot between a lightweight desktop, but still traditional. Looks good with all my GTK apps because pretty much every app I use for the most part is GTK based. Yeah. So for me, XFCE is sort of the sweet spot. Kind of like that.
XFCE is a great environment, and honestly, I installed XFCE along with Awesome and Xmonad and a few others on my ArchBang install, in part to see if they did anything weird with ArchBang that would make it hard for me to do the traditional Arch thing, which is customize my system to all get out. I mean, traditionally in the past, I've used Arch to test out the bleeding edge of all these different desktop environments. Right. And it didn't. I mean, what made me happy with ArchBang is I can do what I would normally do with Arch. It's just pre-set up. So I'm kind of with you. If I'm going to be installing Arch, I'm probably just going to go ahead and install ArchBang from now on and immediately hop in and uninstall a couple of things that I don't want, and go from there because it's all set up and ready to go.
Yeah,
I thought they did a really nice job with it. If you're going to be going the Arch route anyway. Now,
there's a couple other distros to mention, like the one we covered in our distro spinner, Bridge Linux, which is Arch based with XFCE, which might be more up my alley. But one of the things that I like about ArchBang's approach, because Arch itself is a rolling release distro like you'd mentioned, ArchBang only has twice-a-year releases now. And now the guy's only been around since 2010 doing this, so we'll have to see it. We'll see it for another couple more years to see if it continues to play out. But twice-a-year major releases make sense to me. You update and rev the live CD, you update the tools that are stamped on that ISO, and then the user is able to install, and they don't have a massive update they have to do. They just have to do well, still a lot of updates actually, but
it's a lot of updates. But
yeah, it's a little better though. Yeah,
it does make sense. I mean, honestly though, if you're basing something off Arch and you released it last Thursday, there's already a massive amount of updates that you can do. That's the beauty of Arch. It's so easy to stay bleeding edge. And this actually brings up kind of my final point. We've got a new release of Fedora coming up.
I'm sorry, I've never heard of that distribution, Brian. Is that a new one?
The hot dog distribution.
Oh, right. Beefy, yeah. Okay, yeah, Beefy, okay. I've heard of that. It's made by some company.
Now we've been hard, me especially, on Fedora over the years, and part of that is that we really don't necessarily know what Fedora is targeting, and a lot of people have said, why are you guys harshing on Fedora for having some bugs or for look and feel issues, when Fedora is really meant to be kind of a development ground for lots of new Linux-based technologies,
right? The cutting edge,
really cutting edge. And what I kept thinking while using Crunchbang was, they should just adopt this and make this the next Fedora. Because really what we've got here with Crunchbang, and granted, I know Fedora may not be big into OpenBox and men having sex with scorpions, but just simply slap on GNOME Shell, throw on all the projects that the Fedora team is working on. They're all available in the AUR, in the Arch user repository. They're all there. They're all bleeding edge, far more bleeding edge than our package in the Fedora repositories. So why not use something like this and make this really a good bleeding edge development platform for all those great projects that the Fedora project works on. I mean, because they do some great work. I mean, Network Manager came out of the Fedora crew.
Sure.
I mean, some great projects come out of there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why not do the work all on something like ArchBang and make it so it's really bleeding edge? So you can always go to this distro and say, you know what, this is the latest. I always have the latest and greatest from the Fedora project, and just rename the Fedora project to be all these great projects that they work on instead of a distro. And I don't mean this to be a negative on the Fedora.
No, it's funny
as a literal thing.
I had kind of a similar thought process that this truly feels like Arch and all that is truly the uncensored, unfiltered bleeding edge of Linux. What Fedora attempts to be is some sort of curated bleeding edge.
Right.
And that's an interesting approach, but I think where our frustration always finds there is they fall short of curation. The actual curation process, I don't think, has high enough standards.
Well, I mean, the curating the bleeding edge is hard. I mean, how do you curate the bleeding edge without making it not bleeding edge anymore? You have to take time to test things out to make sure they work well. I mean, that's hard. That's too hard for any number of people to do. It doesn't matter if you've got 1,000 people working on it on Fedora project every day. It's just way too much work to do. And I really don't mean this to be harshing on them. I mean it more as a kudos to the people over in Arch and ArchBang and all the various Arch-based distributions, as if you're working on the bleeding edge of the Linux kernel, of these particular desktop environments, this is a really great way to go to keep your system latest and greatest. And if you want to make sure that you have a bunch of testers that are always testing the latest and greatest, this seems to be the easiest way to do that to me, to use Arch and ArchBang and those other distros based on Arch.
I got another plug I'll make. As Metal Freak points out in the chat room, I should make just a random gratuitous Debian mention. So I'll mention Crunchbang, which is kind of like ArchBang, only it's based on Debian. Yeah. And so people might find that a little more to their liking if they don't want to jump off into the Arch land, but they like the idea of something with OpenBox, something really slim, lightweight. Then check out Crunchbang, which we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
They definitely, you definitely can have men having sex with scorpions in Crunchbang as well as ArchBang. That's what's really nice about both of them. Regardless of which one you go with, you get that. That's something you can get.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And the Linux Action Show does not necessarily endorse sex with scorpions. But good luck to all of you who try
necessarily.
Yeah, necessarily. Hey,
caveat.
Hey, man. Hey.
We're reserving the right to, in the future, endorse sex with gigantic man-sized scorpions. But
Brian,
at the moment,
you see, in my later years now, as I have matured into a old man, I have discovered that my opinions about things change as I get older. So you never know. In 5 years, I might be all about scorpion sex. So I do want to keep the door open.
I don't want to harp on the screenshot that one screenshot too much. But if you really do take a look at it, and if you're driving in the car, you gotta check this out when you get to work or something. I don't know
if I want to show it again. There's some buttons.
Don't show it again. Don't show it again. But he's like they're on a bed that's with pure white sheets, and they look just clean as all get out. And I'm wondering where you find a giant man-sized scorpion that's really that clean.
Right. Yeah. Everybody knows that's always the problem with scorpions, right?
That's the problem.
Sand everywhere.
They make the sheets dirty.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, so that's ArchBang. I think that sums up my thoughts pretty well. I did end up, I don't know what it was. I did have an issue loading it on a VirtualBox machine. I was going to try to put out a VirtualBox image for everybody to download. I couldn't get the live CD to boot. The grub would come up, but then after that, it wouldn't proceed beyond that. Now,
yes, I threw it on my my little Lenovo tablet here, and it worked out pretty well. Touchscreen worked.
Oh yeah, really? I threw it on my HP laptop, and of course, the only bummer with the HP laptop is I can't bring it out here and show you the video feed from it, which is I always like to do a VirtualBox because it's easy to grab the screen from that just to give you a visual. So I kind of just try to cycle through some screenshots. But it worked great on raw hardware. Did not work so great for me in virtualization. I don't know if that was an isolated issue with my version of VirtualBox or what, but it's just something worth mentioning, I guess. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward, great distribution that is an awesome way to get your hands on Arch and to learn Linux. It's a great way to learn Linux.
It's a gateway drug to learning more about Linux and Arch, and it's fantastic for that.
The fundamental approach I think ArchBang brings, and Arch does itself, is you learn how to properly fix stuff when it breaks, and when stuff breaks, it makes sense, and you know where to go and what to do. And
you know what's dependent on what for once. You actually install the packages and you're like, okay, I know I need X11 and I need these other packages installed before I can even have, say, my login manager. And you know that now, and you know what those packages are.
So it's great. The value you learn from all of that can be applied to any distribution as well. So it's extremely useful in that regard.
Extremely.
All right, B-Man, any other thoughts?
No, I love it. It's fantastic. It's not going to replace my desktops, but if I ever reinstall my BBS server over here, I'll probably just install ArchBang and then modify it from there.
Same. That's the route I'll go. All right, B-Man. Well, that's the Linux Action Show's look at ArchBang.
And that brings us to the end of this week's mega spectacular scorpion-filled broadcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in this week. If you want to go ahead and follow us on various social networks, you can do that. You can go to the Google Pluses and the Facebookers, and we're Jupiter Broadcasting over on there. If you want to follow me and Chris over on Twitter, where he's Chris LAS. I'm Brian Lunduke.
I got it in our lower thirds.
Almost got that wrong, even though I've had it for years.
I put it in the lower thirds. Chris
You
LAS.
did. Look at that.
Yeah.
The video people just got that right there.
Yep.
Fantastic. Anyway, I wanted to make a quick mention. We're still running the contest for Illumination Software Creator. We've had a lot of interest, and it's getting to be a lot of fun. And I want to point this out. Just because we're getting a lot of interest doesn't mean there's only going to be, it's going to make the chances of winning harder. We're doing many, many, many first place winners depending on the categories we get. We try not to limit ourselves, because what if someone creates some cool application that's like a little text-based game? Well, it's going to be the best text-based game that's submitted. What if someone releases something that's a cool application that lets you make custom Android ROMs? Well, it's the best custom Android ROM maker. So don't let the fact that thousands upon thousands of people are getting excited about this put you off from joining the contest and creating a cool application with Illumination Software Creator. Go to radicalbreeze.com. You can download it over there. It's very, very cool.
All right.
Once again,
I'm going to submit my app then. I'm going to do it. I'm going to submit an app that plays a sound. Just one sound. Is that okay? Can I win the app that
cool sound?
Maybe I'll be like the fail horn or something.
So it'll be the best fail horn sound player.
Is that okay? Can I do that?
You can submit it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So where do I get Illumination Software Creator, Brian?
You can get it at radicalbreeze.com. And of course, if you run Linux, you get about 25% off. You get exactly 25% off, which is also about 25% off, depending on how you word it. Now, if you go there and you are running Linux and you don't see a discount, it's probably because you're running Firefox, and we haven't figured out how to exactly fix that yet. We're working on that. Reload a different browser, Chromium, something like that.
Oh, man. I got to tell you, though, people on the Linux, like Firefox is like the number one. I tell it, I had to give up HTML5 video support because we were doing HTML5 video for all the Linux Action Show.
I know, man.
It is just crazy under Firefox, and the majority of people are using Firefox, so I had to bail. Like, it worked 100% of the time, and like, well, not 100%. It worked great in just about every browser except Firefox.
Except Firefox. Yeah, that's the problem I'm having, is I'm having problems with Firefox. I think we got a fix ready for it, but if you go there and don't see the discount, load up a different browser. It'll work. And if you still can't get it to work, just email us. webmaster@radicalbreeze.com. We'll hook you up. We're good peeps.
Nice.
Anyway, so what do we got going on, Chris? We got anything else we need to let the people know about today?
Well, we're kicking around a deep dive into that new KDE Spark tablet. You know, the one that's coming with Plasma Active. I think next week we're talking about kicking around, looking at that, maybe even seeing if Aaron's available to come on the show, because we had him lined up for this week, but we had to move things around for the Crazy Sunday, so he was nice enough to let us do that. So maybe he can reschedule with us, and maybe we can even get him on the show to talk about that new tablet, which would be really cool.
How fancy would that be?
Yep. And go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, because the B-Man joined me for an in-depth look at DOSBox, which will be out on Saturday.
I did that?
Yeah, remember we did that after last week. So people might
not remember that.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was a good one. Good? Thankfully, I recorded it, so either so you can just watch it back, and it'll be like a whole new show.
What I did at one point in time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fun.
I think that's just about it. The Linux Action Show will be back at its regular Sunday time next week, so you can join us over at jblive.tv at 10 a.m. Pacific, or just download this episode in just about any format you could want over at jupiterbroadcasting.com, and also subscribe to the RSS feeds. By the way, if you scroll down either to the bottom of Jupiter Broadcasting or just towards the bottom of the show notes, we got links in there for Newegg, for ThinkGeek, for Amazon. And if you click on one of those links before you go out and shop, we get a little percentage of your purchase, hooks us up with a little money, helps us pay the bills. And
it's like money laundering, except legal and different.
Right. And also one last plug, the Jupiter Signal. You can find that over at bit.ly/Jupiter Signal. That's Jupiter Broadcasting's monthly newsletter. Put behind the scenes tidbits in there, information about shows, funny trivia bits, and all kinds of stuff.
Chris
That'll be
writes
coming
all
out
sorts
soon.
of poetry for it. Lots and lots of his love letters are in that, and it's really fun to read.
Yeah. It's a little long because I got a lot of love, but you can find that over at bit.ly/Jupiter Signal. And
you do have a lot of love.
Hey, man, what can I say? It's open source love. So check that out, and that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks, I think. So
if you have a love letter and it's GPL'd and you read it to someone else and they fall in love with you because of it, is their love then GPL'd, and are they then compelled to share it with other people?
That's the rules I follow, Brian. Those
so
are the rules
what you're saying is by GPLing your love letters, you promote swinging.
Yeah, I guess I am saying that.
I think so.
Yeah, but only with good-looking people. So
well, I think that's a given. That's part of the GPL.
It's a limited part.
Put that into the first version. Yeah.
Of course, Stallman put that in there. He's one of the good-looking people, right? Brian? With his toes? All right, everyone. Well, I think that just about wraps up this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. Man, I like DuckTales.
Did you know that life is like a hurricane?
Dude, here in Duckburg.
Yeah, race cars, lasers, and airplanes.
It's a duck blur.
Might solve a mystery.